You say you're not crafting an action story, so what does Gladiator have to do with you? Well, Gladiator is not just about action, swords, and sandals. It's about love, lust, greed, power, jealousy, things that really test our values. If you're writing a story where you are putting your characters to the test, Gladiator has something for you. Let's see how the StoryJoules model reveals the heart beneath the armor of Gladiator. I'm Jule Kucera, creator and founder of StoryJoules. I help writers craft powerful stories. We writers can get confused and we think power comes from action, but it doesn't. Power comes from the emotion behind the action. If you think about those emotions in Gladiator, those are what make the action so powerful. It is a rich cauldron and therefore a perfect story to study to see how you can bring more emotion and power into your story. If you'd like to sit back, relax, and not take any notes, the StoryJoules Handbook has this analysis of Gladiator. Just click the link in the description below. We're going to take Gladiator one quadrant at a time, so one video per quadrant, and this aligns very nicely with the 4-act structure. But you may be more familiar with a 3-act structure. I am not a fan of the 3-act structure because of that long second act. It's a long slog to write, especially if you don't have good mileposts, and it can contribute to a muddled middle. So my preference is 4 acts, but this is the relationship to 3 acts. Today, we're all about the first act, the first quadrant. At the beginning of Gladiator, we see Maximus the warrior, Quintus, his loyal lieutenant, at his side preparing for a big battle. Marcus Aurelius is observing from elevated safety, and Commodus and Lucilla are traveling in a cushy carriage to join their father. Maximus has a save the cat moment because Quintus wants to move the cannons. He wants to direct the men to move the heavy cannons. And Maximus says, no, spare them the effort. They're going into battle. Save their strength for that. So that's how he has his save the cat. We also have our first love triangle. Not exactly the kind of love triangle you think of, but it is. We have a father, Marcus Aurelius, who loves his son Commodus, but does not admire him. He also loves Maximus and does admire him. And how do you think that makes Commodus feel? That's the love triangle. We know Quadrant One must have an inciting incident. I've described this in more detail in episode 1. That'll be linked below. But this inciting incident gets the story ball rolling. Something happens to the avatar. It's a first poke at them. And it's the kind of poke where they might underestimate just how important it is. Is Commodus's deathly embrace of his father the inciting incident of Gladiator? No, because the inciting incident has to poke the avatar. And this does affect Maximus in a bit, but it isn't his inciting incident. What gets the first poke at Maximus is when Marcus Aurelius asks him to stay. Don't go home, stay and help me restore Rome to the people. All Maximus wants to do is go home. They've just had a conversation about how he's counting the days, weeks, months. And so now Maximus has to decide, how do I handle this invitation? He goes back to his tent. He talks to his servant Cicero. He says, what do you do when somebody asks you to do something you don't want to do? And Cicero's like, well, I'm a servant. So the answer is I usually do it. But Maximus doesn't have long to debate this question from Marcus Aurelius because he quickly learns that Marcus Aurelius is dead and the new emperor is Commodus. And Commodus immediately tests Maximus's loyalty and says, take my hand, I offer it only once. This is Maximus's crisis question. Take my hand, I offer it only once. The crisis can be phrased, it's a binary choice, and I like phrasing it this way to make the choice really clear. Do I do X and risk Y, or do I do Z and risk W? For Maximus, the choice is, do I take Commodus's hand and risk sacrificing my integrity, my honor? Or do I reject his hand, believing he killed his father, and risk my life? And Maximus, being the man of honor that he is, rejects Commodus's hand. And then he is quickly arrested. And not just arrested, but arrested by Lieutenant Quintus, his friend. When he asks Quintus to send a message to his family, Quintus says, you'll meet them in the afterlife. So Maximus learns that his family is dead. And that is the first quadrant of Gladiator. It's the first 38 minutes of a movie that is 2 hours and 44 minutes long. So that's 23% into the movie, roughly a quarter, very close. And now let's plot Gladiator on the StoryJoules model. We'll use an empty pizza pan. Each slice will be a segment. The movie starts with an opening image, but I don't want to talk about this now. I want to wait until we have the closing image because there's such a beautiful treatment here in this movie. We begin at the status quo, and Maximus's status quo is that he's a general. He's leading soldiers in battle. So he's in a position of authority and respect, and yet he's in service to the emperor. So he is not free of the hierarchy, and all he wants to do is go home. But alas, Marcus Aurelius asks Maximus to stay. That is the first part of the inciting incident, to restore Rome to the people. And Maximus doesn't have much time to debate that choice because he quickly is presented with the different choice. Will he swear allegiance to the new emperor or not? And Maximus chooses not to. I gotta go. I gotta get out of here. And the I gotta go must be the avatar's choice. And their choice will throw them into the next quadrant, the second act, the second quadrant. It can't be somebody else dragging them into it. They have to make this choice themselves. And that's necessary because we want to respect. We want to respect our protagonists, our avatars. And that, in StoryJoules language, is the first quadrant. I have 2 questions for you and your story. Question 1, is my inciting incident powerful enough to get the story ball rolling and make the reader care about the outcome? Secondly, is the I gotta go decision irrevocable? It cannot be undone. And that's an essential question because if it can be undone, the moment your avatar starts to encounter difficulty, the reader or the viewer will just say, well, why don't they just go back and undo what they did? But it's more like, and I like to use the metaphor of driving a car into a car rental return lot. When you drive that car over those spokes, there is no reversing out of that lot. Those spokes will come up, slash the tires, you'll be stuck. So there's no reversing out of that. And you need the same sort of irreversibility, irrevocability in your I gotta go moment. Now let's look at the story foundations, what's underneath this. In the external dimension of order and chaos, by the end of the first quadrant, we should feel an irrevocable movement from order into chaos. And you feel that in Gladiator. It's instantaneous. What about your story? Will the I gotta go choice flip the avatar into a chaotic world? It doesn't have to be a chaotic world of a war or a police chase or something like that. It just has to be opposite of the status quo that they were used to. And when you've been a general leading people into battle and suddenly you're arrested, that is opposite. Think about Gladiator. In the beginning, he's leading an army. He's got Quintus at his side. And by the end of Quadrant One, not only is he arrested, he's arrested by Quintus. It's just a complete reversal. In the internal dimension of stasis and change, Maximus has an interesting character arc because most arcs are a character going from bad to better or better to good to better, good to great. But Maximus is going from great to legendary. His code of ethics is strength and honor. And the test for Maximus is, can you hold to your honor with all your strength, even if it costs you your life? That is the question for legendary heroes, whether it's Maximus or Gandhi or Martin Luther King Jr., or anybody who would hold to their values to death, that they become a legendary role model. Next question. In my work in progress, how is my character being pressured to change internally? So the pressure comes from the order and chaos dimension, and you could say, yes, it's an action movie. There's life and death at stake here, but the action is really pressured from society and who has power in that society and how they use it or how they abuse it. So that's what's applying the pressure for the internal change. Back to your story. In my work in progress, what's the source of external pressure? And that is a wrap for Quadrant One of Gladiator. Next week, we'll move on to Quadrant Two. And the nice thing about Quadrant One is the more potential conflict you set up in here, the easier it'll make for you in Quadrant Two. Just think about all the potential conflicts we have. We've seen so many already, but We haven't even gotten into Commodus and Lucilla yet, so there's a lot to come. This StoryJoules analysis of Gladiator is in the StoryJoules handbook. Click the link below to get it. You could even read ahead and prepare for Quadrant 2 if you would like. Thank you for being here. See you next time. Tally ho.